We all knew, ladies and gentlemen, or at least some of us pretended that it would hopefully never happen one of these days. But when the day finally came, when Chris, even at 30 years of age, finally lost his virginity, it was, I think, like many, listen, listen, I'm a man of the world and stuff like that. But I am gonna say, sometimes even your first time, it's maybe the anticipation is probably better than the act, if you will. Now, with that being said, um, that poor woman who probably had the unenviable task of having to rid Chris of his virginity forever, if it even happened. Now, honestly, we'll get to the speculation as to whether or not it actually happened, but for now, let's get to work. And those memories build towards the true love and the honest emotions that have to occur during that relationship. Because without the emotion, because without the true love and honest emotions, it's just about as meaningless as sex with a prostitute. Chris back in 2009. 3 years later, I came within 7 minutes both of those times. My body, however, felt like it was being used and not fully appreciated. It even took a massive hit when I considered that time in 12 when I had sex with that woman just to lose my virginity and get it over with. Mia Hamm, born 1987 to 1992, but well, circa, okay, so round about that date, if that's even true at all, is the pseudonym of the woman Chris finally completed his bang quest with, relieving him of his status as a virgin with rage. Named after the former soccer player of the same name, she is a boyfriend-free hooker who advertised herself on Backpage.com, a site seized by the feds in 2018 for sex trafficking ties. So there you are, guys. Listen, I know there's probably a lot of Americans who watch this and who don't like Kamala Harris that much, but if there's one thing you can at least say is that, you know what, I think she was the one who kicked it all off, or maybe not. I know she was involved in it somehow. Anyways, Chris paid for an hour with her in April of 2012, which cost him $150 of his tugboat money, and later had sex with her again the following month. He chose to have intercourse with her despite his previous statements that he would not hire a prostitute because it would render the act of sex meaningless. His decision was motivated by a fear of going to jail for an incident that took place in October of 2011. This is despite the fact that prostitution is also illegal in the state of Virginia. So whether or not Chris really gave a shit at this point is a very good question. In May, Chris told his mother Barbara Chandler about having gone to a prostitute, and he claimed that her response was, "I would have had sex with you myself, Christian." This is the second video, literally in the span of about 10 minutes I've made, and we hear, well, exhibits C and D. Good lord. Details about Mia were revealed publicly in a text document Chris sent to Renee. The document was originally an email given to an unidentified individual who provided Chris with Mia's Backpage ad. While Chris is no longer a virgin, he very much still has rage, albeit not to the same extent, and it doesn't seem like getting laid solved Chris's deep-seated problems like he expected it to. And oh yeah, that just about says it all, isn't it? Oh, and by the way, that's that's highly exaggerated. By the way, Chris's boobs are in no way that small. I need so Chris was fornicating about his carnal desires. I need some sex. I am no different from everyone else on that topic. I get horny. I think about it often. I'm dreaming of inserting my rod A into female slot V, followed by some lost genetics. Being an adult virgin sucks. Abstinence is a joke. I am lonely. I am tired of being ignored and overlooked in public by women. I need some sex. Chris on Facebook shortly after before his sexual liaisons with Mia began. Chris describes Mia as a black haired, blue eyed woman of 24, although her ad claimed that she was 20. She has an average figure with C cup breasts. Her personality is described as nice, likable, and down to earth. She has piercings on her lip, tongue, and nipples. She is half Cherokee as well, which Chris enjoyed. Mia has two daughters to a man who abandoned her. Given her young age and the fact that Chris states that she had them years ago, this could possibly mean that Mia was a teenage mother. The girls stay with their grandmother, and Mia travels from town to town and is attempting to get an education to give herself and her daughters a better future, and told Chris that her escort service is just a quick spot of cash for her. While working in Charlottesville, she serviced her clients at a Days Inn hotel. Mia appears to have since quit the escort business as she took her ad down by May 27th, 5 days after her last known posting, and no subsequent ads can be found of her. The title of her last ad read, "Just arrived Mia Hamm specials all day and night 20," and it included a picture. However, the ad itself is unfortunately irrevertible, so its contents are unknown or irretrievable, whatever. As for Chris, aside from a brief raising of his spirits, among other things, and getting a little ego boost from having finally done it, the sexual encounters that he had with Mia did little to lift him out of his state of depression at the time. In the years since the time he got laid, Chris has been largely uninterested in hiring further prostitutes and has gone back and forth between wanting an actual romantic companion and being satisfied with either enjoying his self-proclaimed marriage to fictional characters and or screwing his mother. Take your pick. It's the same result. Chris's account of the meeting. Oh, I forgot to mention, she really enjoyed my dick. It was so big and good. That it was the last dude she was with to her put her to shame. Her words. Kim Wilson has been rendered speechless. After receiving backpage ads of escorts from his unknown contact, Chris drove to the Days Inn located between Route 29 and Route 250 to have sex with one of them. Mia was not Chris's original choice and was actually the third escort he contacted. Riley, the one he intended to have sex with, never responded to his calls, and Kristen, his next choice, was unavailable. Chris then decided to call Mia, who was able to see him and told Chris that she could be found in room 338. Upon entering her room at 4:30 in the afternoon, Chris could tell that Mia had been smoking weed, which made him uncomfortable. He calmed down, however, after smelling hand sanitizer. They stripped for each other and communicated good throughout. At Mia's insistence, Chris wore a green apple flavored condom. She applied it to him with her mouth and then began to give him the old B&J. Chris enjoyed it. Good for him. And stated that her tongue piercing added to the pleasure of the experience. Afterward, she lay beside Chris on the bed and they began feeling each other up. Chris described her China as feeling really good, and he found her clitoris. Good for you, Chris. I'm amazed you could even say the word, let alone find it. Though Mia did not allow him to perform outer course, let's put it. They began making out, but no tongue, and then Chris gave her a massage that he also gives Bob. Stop bringing Bob into this, please! Which he claims she enjoyed. Then, Chris informed her that he was ready for hanky panky. He requested cowgirl with possible missionary later, though this did not happen. Her pelvic thrusts were amazing. Her pussy was tight, even after pushing two daughters out 3 years earlier. Well, there, years ago. And I supported her thrusts with my hands on her knees, weaving back and forth. I also gave her breasts a good thrusting. I felt her front pelvic bone, which really made the top of the game. She came and I came, but on my coming, it was only half felt, and the semen that was mostly inside, but a smidge on the outside of the condom confirmed it. I wasn't exactly expecting D.H. Lawrence, Chris, but could you be a little, like, you've painted the scene in terms of, like, you were trying to build a shelf or something, Chris. Like, it seems a little too plain and matter of fact. My legs ached, even that I would have been a bit more interesting. Afterward, Chris washed his duck with a washcloth that he brought with him. They spend the rest of their time conversing, and Chris gave Mia a gift basket containing free apples, lavender air freshener, breath mints, a 4 gig flash drive with the track sets of the 1990 WTJU Jazz Marathon, Teenage Dream and Stronger, What Doesn't Kill You album tracks, and a Hello Kitty Pez dispenser. Mia told him a bit about her background, and Chris talked to her about the trolls. Great. He also talked to her about Family Guy and South Park before her clock chimed, indicating that her next appointment was arriving. Chris promised that he would call her later, which he did at around 6:30. Mia had already finished with her next client and told Chris that he was a disappointment to her. She said that the man's penis was smaller than Chris's and that it was a wiener in a hallway situation. Very soon after, Chris posted on Facebook that he was no longer a virgin. He taunted trolls with the fact that the only people he would ever know the full story would be himself, Mia, whose aliases he did not mention, the person who put him in contact with her, and his future sweetheart. Apparently, Chris sees no problem with telling a potential girlfriend that he had his first sexual encounter with a prostitute and expects them to be completely okay with it. It's a good thing that we know that, Chris getting a potential sweetheart is honestly not going to happen anytime soon anyway, so there you go. Chris saw her again the following month, although the details of their second encounter are unknown. Mia apparently appears to have left the escort business very soon after this, her second meeting with Chris, meaning that he would have been one of her last clients. What became of her afterwards is currently unknown. Fantasy versus reality. Given what we know about Chris, there is a strong possibility that this is not the true and honest version of what had happened. Chris paints himself as being unrealistically competent at sex for a virgin whose only prior knowledge of it comes from pornography. Additionally, additionally, Chris describes the incident as going off without a hitch, which is highly unlikely for a number of reasons. The most obvious of which is his horrifically bent duck. It is highly likely that Chris is omitting unflattering details or making up flattering ones to make himself look better. Chris's notion that Mia enjoyed the experience probably stems from the fact that prostitutes often pay their clients compliments because it helps them make more money to do so. Chris would probably be naive enough to believe that she was being sincere, or he could just be telling himself that she was in order to serve his already massive ego. In response to speculations about the event on the Chris discussion board Quickie Forums, former troll Alec Bensaleri wrote, "Yeah, Jesus, people, let me ask, those of you who aren't virgins, a question. What was the least interesting time you had sex like? Chris's hooker time was a tenth as interesting as that. He lay down, the hooker got on top of him and rode him for a bit, then Chris decided his life was better than it was the day previously. The end." In many ways that is also possibly true because, well, the only thing I can suggest before we bid adieu for another day is that, well, you would have thought Chris would have thought to have mentioned this afterwards. That's probably the evidence going for this because usually when things don't really go Chris's way, or rather they were less enterprising than he feels like they should be, Chris probably would have been fast to have made more mentions or to have said a little bit more about this experience. The fact that Chris doesn't really say much about this experience can mean one of two things, in my opinion. Either it wasn't as good as what he thought it was going to be after years of whinging about his virginity, or it did happen, but it didn't inspire Chris to look for it again. But with all that being said and done, what do you guys reckon? If it did happen, then, well, okay, I guess, but the fact that Chris didn't think to go out any further beyond this is, well, one way or the other. And second, well, if it did happen, or if it didn't happen, why would Chris try to go out of his way? Is it literally just that petty to try and get one up on the trolls by not calling him a virgin anymore? You tell me, guys, because I might be a little bit at a loss here. But with all that being said and done, I will see all of you guys again next time. Thank you.